Okay, we are now
okay,
recording.
now it's okay, yes.
We are now recording. Welcome everyone to the Shiur in Pirkei Avos. We left off last year. Actually, it was on the 14th day in the month of Elul, at the end of last year in Tafshin Ayin Tes, that we learned part of this Mishnah that's in front of us, Mishnah Daled, which was said by Hillel. And we did the part beginning at the end of the second line, which I'll get to in a moment, beginning where it says Hillel Omer. Once again, whenever we learn Pirkei Avos, we start with the statement, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelik Li'olam Haba. It's not in front of us, but that's the beginning of every parak. Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelik Li'olam Haba. Every member of the Jewish people has a share in the world to come. Shenemar, the pasuk says, "Va'amei kulam tzadikim." Your entire nation is righteous. La'olam yirshu oretz, they shall forever inherit the land. Neitzer matoi, they are the branch of my planting. Maaseh yodai le'ispoyer, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified, says Hashem. I would like to comment one more comment on that particular statement at the beginning of Pirkei Avos. It says that every Jew has a chelek, a share in the world to come. How do we know that? Because the pasuk says, "Va'amech kulam tzadikim," your entire nation is righteous. Notice, it doesn't say "Va'amech kulam chachamim," your entire nation is wise or super intelligent. In the nations at large, the greatest accolades are paid to those who are of the greatest intelligence. The genius class, the high normal class, the better group. But anyone who's an average person isn't considered b'derech klal, in a general way, to be of a high value to the society. While in the Jewish way of life, it doesn't really matter how much you know. What matters is how righteous you are. And consequently, va'amech kulam tzadikim, every single Jew has a share in the world to come because we have the ability to choose righteousness. And since we have that ability, we maintain our share in the world to come. We now go to the Mishnah. Hillel Omer, second line towards the end of the line that's on your screen. Hillel Omer, Hillel says, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, you should not separate yourself from the community, unless, of course, the community is a community of wicked people. And that's why the next statement comes, Va'al tamin ba'atzmecha ad yom moscha. Don't think you can stay amongst wicked people and remain good, because even until the last day before you die, you're capable of switching your allegiances. As the Gemara points out, there were people who, as old as 80 years old, even though he was a Kohen Gadol, he ultimately lost his faith because he didn't accept the truth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Are we recording it?
Yes, Pharaoh, yes.
Don't trust yourself until the day of your death. We have a statement in the Gemara which says V'shuv yom echad lifnei moscha, lifnei misascha. Also part of Pirkei Avos. Return and do tshuva one day before you die. No one knows when they're going to die, and that's why it says you have to do tshuva one day before. Today, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Of course, we have a moda ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim. I thank you that you returned my soul to me. Rabbi Amunasecha, your faithfulness is great every single day for the last how many number of years? No one wants to admit how many number of years, but whatever number of years it is, every day we wake up. So we know that Hashem's faithfulness is great, but we can't completely trust ourselves until we have rooted in our neshama. You have to answer Hashem lekecha. Then it says, don't judge your friend until you're in his place. And in America they have another expression like that. Don't judge an Indian until you walk a mile in his moccasins. That's another way of saying it, of course. But what Hillel said is, you don't know what other people are faced with. You know, when I was a young fellow on the Lower East Side, so I was the leader of the so-called junior congregation, which used to daven. A bunch of young children began to daven. Their parents brought them to shul at 10 o'clock in the morning, so they would not disturb the davening upstairs. So because I had to lead that junior congregation at 10 o'clock in the morning, I must have been about 15, 16 years old, I had to go and daven at the 7 o'clock minyan in order that I would be able to daven with the minyan properly, because I couldn't daven in the main minyan. I wouldn't be able to do the job properly. So I davened in the early minyan at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I would go to this minyan, and I would see Jews who were wrapped up in a talis. I would see Jews who davened. They seemed to be davening with kavana. They answered Amen Yeshmei Rabbah. They were, in my eyes, righteous Jews. And no sooner did they leave the shul than they immediately went to the subway and they went to work. They used to come. There was one fella, he would jingle the coins in his pocket when he was in the shul. And I once said to him, "You have coins in your pocket?" And he got angry at me. And he said, you're a young whippersnapper. What do you know? Because I couldn't understand. How could a person go to work on Shabbos and daven in the morning? Didn't make sense. But when you realize that these people felt the pressure of making a living, and if they didn't work on Shabbos, they felt they would not be able to support their families, they were wrong, of course. Hashem would have helped. But we can't judge people until we're in their place. The pressures are unbelievable. The need to provide sometimes overrides the seichel. And consequently, Hillel says, Al toden es chavercha ad shetagi elim kamo. The truth of the matter is, Rabbi say, that the Jews in the 30s and 40s and 50s who refused to give in and refused to become Mechalel Shabbos in order to make money, those are the Jews whose children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren today are the Orthodox Jewish community. They were the ones who saved Klal Yisrael because they refused to give in. They were poor and they struggled, but they were mighty. But we still can't judge those until we're in his place. And then comes up until this part, we completed in-depth study a year ago. We are now going to the new statement that we did not yet discuss, and here it comes. Va'al tomar davar, do not say something she'i efshar lishmoa, that it can't be understood. Don't make obscure statements in the hope that the people you're speaking to or you're discussing with will understand what you're saying. Don't teach your children with obscure statements. Don't talk to your friends in cryptic verses because you hope that one day they'll understand, because it's possible they'll never get it. That's the plain pshat of the statements. Don't say something that's impossible to be understood to hear, because in the end you hope it will be heard. That's one way of explaining this line. We'll come back and explain it in more detail in a moment. And don't say, when I have free time, that is when I will be able to learn. Eshna from the word Mishnah. Don't say, when I get free time, that's when I'm going to learn. You know why? Hillel said, Shema lo sipona, because you may never have free time. There's always something coming up, and the free time you planned for may never exist. It may be that you said, when I retire, I'm going to learn. And you may never retire. Or, God forbid, you may not live to retirement. Or you may sleep through your retirement. We don't know. Consequently, a person should never say, when I got free time, then I'm going to learn. Because you may never have free time. In other words, you have to make free time to learn. You have to set aside a zman kavua, a set time for learning, and in no time, you're going to become a Talmid Chacham. You know, we learn one Mishnah a day between Mincha and Ma'ariv in the shul when we're in shul, and now we're learning one Mishnah a day here on the Zoom. We're almost finished with Shas for the second time. Just one Mishnah a day, because we make it our business to learn a little bit at a time. Last night we had a Shiur in the Masechta Makos, so we started it a while back, almost 2 years ago. But we're already half through the Masechta, in-depth study, because each day we learn a little bit. Okay. Now, the Rambam, when he explains the statement, don't say something that's impossible to be understood in the hope that one day it will be understood. The Rambam says that this is a halacha l'maisa, and he says a teacher, a rebbe, a rabbi should not make any statements in the hope that his obscure reasoning or his fancy convoluted thinking and language will somehow be understood, because it may never be understood. And the Rambam says, therefore, a rav, a teacher, should always speak b'lashon nikiya v'kala, clear, simple terminologies, clear, simple things. I remember I was in a shiur. I went to hear a shiur from a great rabbi, and he got up and spoke. And from the moment he started speaking until he finished, about a half an hour later, I must admit, it sounded terrific. I didn't understand one word. I was sitting there looking at myself and thinking, am I not intelligent? Am I missing something? So I turned to the fellow sitting next to me and I said, did you understand this speech? So he said, he's so brilliant, no one understands anything he says. I didn't think it made any sense at all. What good is it if no one understands what he says? So the Rambam says, don't say, Dover she'yef shelishmoa, because shesofa lishama. A lot of times people say, oh, he's a brilliant orator, brilliant thinking. You know what he's talking about? Absolutely no idea. That's not something that can benefit mankind, says the Rambam. The Rambam says you're supposed to speak in clear language that's clear to be understood. Unless, of course, you're speaking to a group of geniuses and you yourself are a genius, and then perhaps they'll understand you too. But under normal circumstances, us average people, says the Rambam, we have to speak in clear language in the hope that everybody is going to understand it. And you say it in a clear way that it will happen. Now, the Abarbanel comes along and he says, there's another way to understand this. Al tomar davar she'i efshar lishmoa. Don't say, I'm going to do something or say something and no one is ever going to hear about it. I'm going to do something and I'm going to say something that no one will ever pick up on, because shesofo lihishama. The end result is that it will definitely be heard, because Hashem hears everything. And a person shouldn't say, I'm private. I'm b'chadvei chadorim. I'm on my own inner room. No one can see, no one can hear. Don't say that, because shesofo lihishama, the end result is that it's going to be heard. In addition, Al Tomar, says Reb Moshe Amshalino, Al Tomar, don't say to yourself, Davar, this learning, Efshar lishmoa. It's impossible to understand it. A person shouldn't go to a Blat Gemara to a Rashi in Chumash, a person shouldn't go and say, I don't understand this law at all. You know, we're reading Vayikra now. So we're learning Chumash Vayikra. A lot of Chumash Vayikra has some very obscure teachings. We're not familiar with them. For instance, Karbanos. We're not familiar with Karbanos. We're not even familiar with the real translation of the word Karbanos. The truth of the matter is that a Karban does not mean sacrifice. That's not what it means. A Zevach is a slaughter, a sacrifice. Karban means to come close. The word Karov, it's totally misunderstood. And so many of the laws of the Chumash Vayikra that include Tumah and Tara, impurity, purity, this week's Sedra, which speaks about Tsaras. We don't even know how to translate Tsaras. For sure, it's not Hansen's disease. It's not leprosy, for sure not. Because leprosy is a progressively debilitating disease which ultimately causes death. And Tsaras can be healed in 7 days. And you don't go to the doctor for Tsaras. You go to the Kohen for Tsaras. Because the Tsaras is a physical manifestation of a spiritual malaise. That's a fancy terminology. But it means that Tsaras is a physical disease which comes because of something missing in the spiritual realm of the human being's behavior. And we know that one of the chief causes, as the Gemara in Erechin points out, is of course Lashon Hara. So don't say, therefore, Al Tomar, don't say, Dover she'yev shel this thing is impossible to understand, I can't learn it, because Shesofo Shama. The truth of the matter is, if you put your mind to it, you will understand it. If someone reviews and reviews and reviews and gets it, first time doesn't, the second time doesn't, the third time, there are many things in our lives that the first, second, or third time we didn't quite get. But after we plugged at it and we heard it again and again, and we made a diagram and we did it slowly but surely, ultimately, Shesofo Shama. Ultimately, it can be understood. And consequently, don't say it's impossible, because it's not impossible. Then result is, it can be done. And finally, Va'al Tomar, and don't say, Likishe Ipone or Efne Eshne, don't say that when I have the free time, that's when I'm going to learn, because Shema Lo Tipone. There's a good chance that you're never going to learn. Now, the word Eshne comes from the word Shnei, Shnayim, two. It's also related to the word Mishnah, which means teaching or review. It's related to the word we say in the Shema, V'shinantam levanecha. You should teach it diligently to your children. Now, why do they translate the words V'shinantam levanecha? You should teach it diligently to your children. Why do they translate diligently? It says V'shinantam. V'shinantam comes from the word Mishnah. You should teach it to your children. Why diligently? So Rashi in Chumash explains that the word V'shinantam means coming also from the word shein. And shein means a tooth. And a tooth is sharp. And because a tooth is sharp, what the pasuk is saying is V'shinantam levanecha, teach it toothily, meaning sharply, to your children. So don't say Al Toma Likishe Efne Eshne. When I have free time, then I'm gonna have it sharply in my mind. So what's happening over here? Here's a person who's actually going to learn. He's learning, but he doesn't have it sharp. It's not well reviewed. It's not something that he can point to and say, aha, I've got it. It's mine. I own this Mishnah. I own this pasuk, Chumash. I've got it. Don't say when I have free time, I'll do my chazorah. Because the truth of the matter is, chazorah is the ikar of learning. Chazorah is the main part of learning. Because when someone is reviewing and they're reviewing the learning, it stays in their mind. It's when you don't review that it flies out of your mind. So don't say, says Hillel, Al tomar l'kashe'efna eshna. Don't say when I have free time I'll review. Shema lo tipana, because you may never get a chance to review. One of the great things we could do when we learn something like this Mishnah is, okay, we just learned that Hillel said, Al tomar dover she'iyef shelishmoa shesof al hishama. Don't say that I'm going to say something now that ultimately will be understood, because it might not ever be understood. And therefore, don't say also, Dover iyef lishmoa. It's impossible for me to understand this, because the truth of the matter is, if you work at it, shesof oli hishama. The end is you can understand it. How can you understand it? That's the next line. Don't say when I have free time I'll review. You may never review, because if you review it now, Al tomar. Don't say, Dover, this thing, she'iyef lishmoa. It's impossible to understand it, because shesof oli hishama. The end is it will definitely be understood. When is that? When you don't say Al tomar l'kashe'efna eshna. Don't say when I have free time I'll review, because Shema lo tipana, you may never review, and therefore review now. Review it. Review it and do it again and again and again. And isn't it so, Rabbi Say? Isn't it so that when we do something and we are chazering it over, we review it, and we do it again, and we do it again, isn't it so that we get good ultimately at doing that thing, at learning that thing, at understanding that thing? Isn't it so that the more we learn, the more we get an understanding of what we're doing? Isn't that so? There was a fella who came along and he said, the reason I don't wear tefillin is because I don't understand why I should and what it means. I don't understand this law. I can only do that which I understand. Well, philosophically, you can argue that that's a total bag of foolishness. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because none of us are infinitely wise, and so there's much that's beyond the gray matter that Hashem gave us. But the Jewish people have a secret. We have a secret which says, Na'aseh, if we do it, the nishma, we will hear it. We don't have to hear it first. We do it first. When we do it, ultimately we hear it. This young man, ultimately, who didn't want to put on tefillin, met a religious girl somehow, and he was interested in marrying her. So she said, listen, I can't marry a person who doesn't put on tefillin every day. I can't. It's impossible. I come from a religious home. This was back in the 1950s. She stuck to her guns. He said, I can't marry someone who doesn't put on tefillin every day. He said, if you marry me, I promise I'll put on tefillin every day. She said, first you put on tefillin every day, then we'll talk about marriage. So he started putting on tefillin. Anyway, he married this woman. I met him 20 years later. He came over to me and he said to me, after I had become a rabbi, when I first met him, of course, I wasn't anything, whatever, but I became a rabbi, and he said to me, he said, I want to tell you something, Rabbi. He said, you know, I said, yeah, I know about it, because this was a relative of mine. I knew what he had said. He said, I want to tell you something. More than I've given to the tefillin has given to me, because the more I put it on, the more I understood what it represented. The more I understood how it connects me and ties me to my faith in the Borei Olam, the one who created the world. The doing of the putting on the tefillin, the naaseh, became nishma. Says Hillel, Al tomar davar she'iyef shelishmoa. Don't say it's impossible to understand something, because shesof oli hishama. In the end, it will definitely be understood. You know why? Don't say when I have free time I'll review. You might not review, but if you do review, there's a guarantee. When you review, you're going to understand this. You're going to get it. It's going to make sense. And it's all going to come together in the fact that the Jewish people are a righteous nation. And therefore, La'olam Yirshu Oretz, they shall forever inherit the land. Yetz Hashem, tomorrow night, we're going to continue with Pirkei Avos at 7:45. Everyone is welcome. Right now, we're going to our continued study of Mishnayos, and we're going to be going to Mishnayos Kalim and Perik Yutes. I believe it's Mishnah Gimel that we're up to, and it's going to come up on the board right now. Here it is. So here is that particular Mishnah. All right, I'm stopping the recording over here. Oh, here it is.